I'm Harley Smith, and this is the Master Growers course. Today we're beginning a series on integrated pest management, and we're going to focus on prevention. I used to think that integrated pest management was one of my weakest subjects because I've been growing now commercially and as a hobbyist for over 20 years, and in all that time I've only had to spray 2 or 3 times. But I realized that what I thought was a weakness is really a strength. I love indoor gardening. I come in at the end of the day, knock the snow off my shoes in the winter, go down to my basement, to a grow room. I have full spectrum light. I have fruit on the vine. I have aromatic herbs. I spend 10 minutes in my garden. The stress of the day is gone. I could spend 2 hours in front of a television and not feel nearly as peaceful as just a few minutes in my garden. That's because I'm enjoying healthy plants. If you can grow healthy plants, hybrids plants, you can enjoy your hobby even more. Once you have a pest problem, though, you lose sleep. Then it becomes stressful. Now, I don't want to be an Orkin man as a hobby. I want to enjoy my plants. So prevention is the key. Now, in my 5-step program to integrated pest management, I focus on prevention. Number 1 is follow protocols. Start clean, keep it clean. If that's all you remember from today's presentation, remember Harley's mantra. Start clean, keep it clean. Develop good protocols, good habits to prevent diseases and pests from even entering your garden. Number 2 is strengthen the plant's natural resistance to pests and disease. If you can grow such healthy plants that the Brix is at 12% or higher, sucking insects won't even recognize the plant as food. They won't even land on it. So one of the main goals for integrated pest management is to grow healthy plants. And I'm going to show you ways to do that in today's series. Now the rest of it is step 3 is using organic sprays. Sometimes nature finds a way, and we have to do some spot treating. But if we can catch them early, we can knock them down in a very benign way with just some organic sprays. Step number 4 in my 5-part plan is to introduce beneficial insects. Bring in the good guys to fight the bad guys. And finally, we're only going to spend a very little time of it in the series, is applying chemicals as a last resort. And all I'm going to say about that today is if you apply a chemical spray, pesticide or fungicide, make sure it's rated for food crops. If it's only rated for ornamentals, don't use it. Do no harm. So let's focus on step number 1. Follow protocols. Remember my mantra? Start clean, keep it clean. But that has a lot of parts to it. The first part is no plants from outside. I know in the fall it's very tempting to want to bring in a plant from outdoors to save it from the winter. But if you bring in a plant from outside, you're bringing in every pest and disease from outside with it. And not only that, but you're creating an environment where the only thing the pests have to feed on are your plants in your indoor garden. So there's no competition. So no plants from outside. That was one of the first mistakes I made. I brought in a plant from outside one time, many, many years ago, before I had the start clean and keep it clean mantra. And when I did, that year I had spider mites for the first and only time, knock on wood, and I had some whitefly problem. After that, I realized it's better to start clean, keep it clean, to start from seed in the fall for the winter crop, or to take cuttings from clean stock, or take cuttings or take clones out of tissue culture where they're in an aseptic environment. If you start clean, you can keep it clean. But if you're bringing in pests from outside, you're going to end up fighting them all winter long. No plants from outside even applies to bringing in clones from an outside source. I've worked with commercial growers that are purchasing cuttings, purchasing clones that are rooted, and they have brought in spider mites and russet mites into their grow facility. So it's very important to have a very secure, trusted source from any plants, even cuttings and clones that are coming in from outside. And what I do in my grow room, in my garden, is I have a grow tent that's an isolation chamber. So if I bring in even a small clone from outside, I'm going to assume it has powdery mildew. I'm going to assume it has spider mites, even if my source swears that there's no problems from a clean environment. I want to keep the pests in so they don't get into my garden. And then I can keep a close eye on them, and I like to pre-treat my clones at least 3 times. I like to use a spray that has the active ingredient azadirachtin. That's an extract from neem oil. And what that does is it stops the mites or insects from molting. It's an anti-molting agent. So it prevents the bugs from growing up and laying more eggs. So I break the reproductive cycle. And it works very well, especially on the juvenile bugs, not on the adults. So I like to do 3 treatments, though, for pre-treatments. If there's a few eggs there that we missed, once it hatches, I want to hit it right away so that it can't grow up and lay more eggs. Or if wait a few more days, hit it 1 more time, the 3rd time is a charm. By that time, I've broken the reproductive cycle of anything that may have hatched in that period of time. Also, the neem extracts, the azadirachtin, is an anti-feedant. So even if 1 or 2 of those eggs do hatch and the juvenile bug comes out, it doesn't want to feed and it will starve to death. But the point is, if you can break the reproductive cycle, you're going to win, one way or the other. The insects reproduce so fast that if they get out of control, it's exponential increase. Within 1 grow, there could be millions of bugs just from a few that are introduced into your environment. The next point, in addition to no plants from outside, is wear clean shoes. If you went into a commercial greenhouse, they wouldn't let you walk in there with your street shoes. You'd have to either put on booties that cover your shoes, or you'd have to take off your shoes, put on rubber boots, step in sterilizing solution or a bleach solution before you even enter the room or enter the greenhouse. So if that's what the pros do, we should be doing the same thing. And it's easy. I just have a pair of slippers right next to my grow room door. I slip off my outdoor shoes so I'm not tracking anything in, put on my slippers, go into my room. Start clean, keep it clean. Along with clean shoes, clean clothes. You should have a set of gardening clothes that are specific to your indoor grow room. I have a lab coat at home for my garden that never leaves the house. It's either in my grow room, or when I leave, it goes into the closet or directly into the laundry. So I'm covering up anything that I might have tracked in on my clothes. I also like to have a set of gardening clothes that are nice, that are comfortable. I have 1 shirt, for example, that has very old. It has holes in the elbow, but it's the most comfortable shirt in my closet. My wife, Sue, would never let me be seen in public in that shirt. So that is part of my gardening clothes. And it's great because I put that shirt on. My plants don't see me, but I'm comfortable and I can enjoy my plants more, and I'm not bringing in any pest and disease from outside. The next step of protocol, very simple. Wash your hands, especially if you're a pet owner or if you're a smoker. If you're a smoker, you handle a cigarette, you could literally transfer tobacco mosaic virus to your plants. What are the odds? It happens. I was in the Netherlands one time where they were doing tests on growth stimulants, biostimulant products, because they were having trouble with tomato mosaic virus. They would want to outgrow the virus. Remember, the virus spreads from the old growth to the new growth. So if you can use growth stimulants, you can outgrow the virus before it spreads and just race to harvest. But in this case, I was in there where they were testing the biostimulants. And while I was there, I thought, this is a pristine environment. They start clean and keep it clean here. I didn't see a brown leaf anywhere in that whole greenhouse. While I was thinking that, in came the owner's wife with a lit cigarette in her hand. As she was walking toward us, she'd put the cigarette in her mouth, she'd handle a few plants, come back, take the cigarette, grab the cigarette again. I looked at the owner before his wife even got there. I said, you know where that virus came from? He said, no, where? He's looking at the vents. He's looking at the drains. I said, right there. Even an experienced grower broke one of the rules of protocols. Make your grow room a no smoking zone. If you have to smoke, take a break, but then wash your hands before you come back in. It's that simple. Also, if you're a pet owner, I make my grow room a no pet zone. I love my cats. But if my cat's running around out in the field and then it comes in, rubs against me, it could be bringing in mites. It could be bringing in mold spores, all kinds of things from outside with it. So my grow room's no pet zone. And if I do pet my pet, if I happen to do that, just make sure that I wash my hands before I come in there so I'm not contaminating my grow room. Start clean, keep it clean. The next protocol to follow is sanitize your tools in rubbing alcohol. I like to keep a jar of rubbing alcohol in my grow room. When I'm doing some trimming and pruning, after I'm done, I put it into the rubbing alcohol, at least dip it and wipe it off so I have clean tools. If you had a problem, let's say you're in your grow room, you see a few suspect leaves, some yellow leaves or some spots. Maybe there's some insects. Maybe there's a little bit of a hot spot with powdery mildew. If you clip that off and then go to the next plant and trim that, you're spreading disease from plant to plant. So keep those tools clean with rubbing alcohol. Along with that, if you're growing outdoors, have an outdoor garden, have a separate set of tools for your outdoor garden and your indoor garden. That way, start clean, keep it clean. The next protocol is proper monitoring of your grow room. Use sticky traps and bug barriers whenever possible. Every once in a while, nature does find its way, no matter how careful we are, but we want to catch it early. The yellow sticky traps will attract fungus gnats or whitefly. The blue sticky traps are great for monitoring other insects like thrips. If you can catch them early, you might just be able to spot treat to knock them down. But if you wait until it's a problem, until there's an infestation, you'll have to use stronger measures. So monitor with sticky traps and bug barriers. Also, think of setting up a perimeter. Start to think of any vector of contamination that a bug could use as an entryway into your grow room. If you have vents, make sure that they're sealed up with insect screens. And if you do, I recommend using the screens that the pros do, that are rated for thrips, that are very fine mesh. Because if the thrips can't get through those screens, no other insect's going to get through there. Don't just use a screen door screen to keep houseflies out. Other insects are very small and they could get in. So think of the setting up the perimeter and monitoring very closely. Now, one other tip though, if you're putting in screens on your exhaust fans to keep the insects from coming in, that's going to restrict the airflow. So you're going to have to make sure you specify a little bit stronger fans, but it's worth it. The next step is a little bit extreme, but I've seen it in industry, so I'm going to share it with you. That's positive pressure. Now, I've worked with some greenhouses that are producing certified virus-free stock, or they're shipping stock from state to state, and they need to have an extra level of protection in the start clean and keep it clean. So they have an entryway with positive pressure. That means filtered air is being blown into the entryway. There's more pressure inside than outside. Positive pressure. When you open the door, air comes out instead of air being pulled into that room. Now, it's a little bit extreme, but I've seen it too, and that's what they use for clean rooms, for tissue culture micropropagation. They'll have HEPA filters for the air that filter the air to 0.3 microns. That filters out not just dust and mold, but it filters out bacteria, bacterial spores, even large viruses. The ultimate in start clean, keep it clean is starting in an aseptic environment with tissue culture, but positive pressure does work. The next step, clean up regularly. You're going to want to wash the floors, even the walls sometimes. In a clean room for tissue culture, they'll literally wash the walls, floors, and ceilings once a week. But the ultimate is start clean, keep it clean. Also, if you have a garbage bag in your grow room, I recommend bringing in a small one. If you bring in a large garbage bag, what are you going to do? You're going to be trimming off leaves and doing your pruning, throwing them in the garbage, and you're going to start to build it up over time, and you're going to be making a nest for fungus, a nest for the insects if they're there. So it's better to have a small garbage bag, so when you do your daily maintenance, do a little bit of trimming or pruning, you pack out your trash. Bring in the big garbage can when you're doing harvesting or when you're cleaning up between crops. I'll give you an example of what I consider the ultimate of start clean, keep it clean. I visited a greenhouse one time that was doing certified virus-free stock. So they couldn't even have one whitefly. If they had one insect in that greenhouse, insects are a vector for contamination. They can spread viruses from plant to plant or fungus from plant to plant. So they had to go to extreme measures. When I visited, and I was lucky even to get in there, the only reason I even was able to go into that greenhouse was because I was working with the intern that set up the hydroponic systems for them. So I was lucky. There's limited access. And you could learn from that too. Don't just start letting anybody come in and visit your grow room. I know you're proud of your plants. You want to show them off, but you don't know where that grower has been. If they were outdoors, they could be tracking in spider mites from their greenhouse. Where did they come from? So limit your access as much as possible. Maybe even have them take off their shoes before they come in. Put on gloves possibly, maybe even a mask if you're going to have visitors from outside. So that's something to remember. So that was the first step, limited access. Now, when I went in there, I went into an entryway first. I had to take off my shoes. I had to put on rubber boots that went halfway up my calves, and then step in sterilizing solution before I went into the next room, not even the greenhouse. I also had to put on an overcoat covering that went from my neck all the way down to my ankles. I didn't have to change my clothes, but I had to cover them all up. So I stepped in sterilization fluid in a shallow pan and walked into the next room. And in that room, I was required to wash my hands with antibacterial soap. And they were strict in their protocols. They even had colored tape on the floor. And you don't cross the yellow line until you've done X, Y, and Z of protocol. That's how serious they were. So I went through the protocols that they required, stepped in sterilizing solution again, opened up the door, not to the greenhouse, but for a positive pressure entryway. So the air came out instead of being pulled in, and the next step, I got to go into the greenhouse. And it was a positive pressure greenhouse as well, with extreme measures to prevent any insect or fungus from getting in there. But it was worth it because they could grow certified virus-free stock that commanded the highest price and with the highest customer satisfaction. Oh, by the way, they were starting their plants, tissue culture, micropropagation with aseptic technique on the clones that they were growing in-house that went from their clean room with positive pressure into their positive pressure greenhouse. There was no chance for any pest or disease to contaminate those clones. So that was the ultimate of start clean and keep it clean. Now, do I recommend that for all the gardeners? No, of course, that's a little bit extreme. But if you're going to go to extremes, it's better to do that in prevention instead of going to extremes and trying to spray pesticides and fight diseases from crop to crop. I've seen some growers who have been fighting spider mites for years and they never get them under control because they overwinter. They go dormant. You think you got them, and they come back. But if you start clean with not a single spider mite egg, you can keep it clean all the way to harvest. Enjoy your hobby from year to year to year. Okay, before we finish this section, let's just pause for a second. I want you to ask yourself, how many of these things in protocols do you do every time, without exception? Not if I'm only going to be down in the grow room for 10 minutes, so I take my shoes off. How many of them you do every single time religiously? Now, if you do these things every time, without exception, I guarantee that you have very few pest problems in your environment. Now, I'll ask you something else. Are these things a hassle? The answer is yes, they are a hassle at first. But what starts out as a hassle later becomes a habit. And what starts as a habit later becomes a lifestyle. If you get the mindset of start clean, keep it clean, if you're always looking for vectors of contamination, you're going to have a clean environment and you'll be able to enjoy your hobby more than ever before. So thanks for attending and participating in this section on following protocols. Start clean, keep it clean. Don't be an orkin man as a hobby. Enjoy your plants, the aromas, the flavors, the medicinal characteristics. Grow the best of the best, and you'll enjoy your hobby for years to come.